We tested exhausts today. They come in all different sorts of shapes and sizes, and usually no two exhausts look or sound the same. So how do you know which one is gonna be best for you? Well, that's what this exhaust shootout's for. We've got 3 different exhaust systems that we're gonna pit up against each other to see which one emerges victorious. There's 4 categories we'll judge each exhaust on: the quality, how much it weighs, how it looks, and most importantly, how it sounds. We've got 2 different vehicles to test it on: my GR86, which will be stock besides the exhaust that we install, and my FRS, which has aftermarket exhaust components on it. At the end of the video, we'll total up all of the scores to crown a winner. Let's take a look at the lineup. We've got the Remark Boso Edition Axleback coming in at $455. We also have the Invidia N1 Catback for $1299. And then we have the Apex I N1X Evolution Extreme Muffler Catback, which I'm just gonna refer to as the Apex I N1 from now on because that's too many words. And that comes in at $1499. 3 different price points, but does that mean we have 3 different levels of quality? Well, one of the first things I look at when I open up a brand new exhaust is the welds, the flanges, and the tips. There really aren't that many welds on the Remark Boso Edition Axleback, so we'll start there. Right off the bat, I can see that the welds on this are pretty damn good. For comparison's sake, here's the welds on the stock exhaust. It's got some nice and thick flanges, and I like that they designed the main flange that mates up to the mid-pipe to retain the stock gasket. A lot of different Axlebacks make you take that stock gasket off and then use just a universal one. The Bosuzoku Inspiration, which is these elongated tips that you don't see very often, is a unique touch. And I gotta say, this is a solid 4 out of 5 in terms of quality. It's great, but at the end of the day, it's still just an Axleback. The welds on the Invidia N1 aren't quite as satisfying to look at as the Remark, but they certainly are better than the stock exhaust. Looking at the flanges, not quite as thick, but still pretty beefy. It does make up for it though with these massive 4-inch tips. I mean, look at the size of those. It fits my whole fist in here. Oh, I do notice though that there seems to be some scratches from the manufacturing process on both of the mufflers. This is a brand new exhaust system. There shouldn't be scratches. So because of that and the average welds, I'm gonna give this a 3.5. A little bit better than average, probably better than say an eBay exhaust. Actually, maybe we should test out an eBay exhaust. What do you guys think? Ooh, holy shit, this exhaust. This kind of just blows the other 2 out of the water in terms of quality. I mean, this is all weld porn. Is that a thing? Am I weird for saying that? It also has these weird canisters here. These are Helmholtz resonators, and they use fancy science and physics to help to eliminate certain frequencies. And in this case, the frequencies that cause the annoying drone that a lot of exhausts suffer from. Because these have that, droning is not an issue with this exhaust. When we look at the mufflers here, and really the whole exhaust, these things are a work of art. I will say though, I'm not seeing the thick exhaust flanges that we saw on the Remark exhaust. These are just flanges that are rolled over. They're gonna get the job done, but just not quite as sturdy. But besides that, this thing screams quality, and it's what you'd expect from an Apex I product. And plus, it's a $1,500 exhaust, so it better fucking be good. We're gonna go with a 4.5 out of 5 because, you know, nothing's perfect. And having said that, it's time to figure out which one of these exhausts is more heavy set than the rest, because let's face it, it's easier to take weight out of the car than go on a diet. One of the benefits of an aftermarket exhaust system most of the time is weight savings. The stock exhaust on most cars weighs a ton. I mean, look at the GR86 stock muffler. This thing is massive and it weighs 22.3 pounds. We're gonna use this as a reference for the Axleback. I'm also gonna throw the mid-pipe section on here so we can get a reference for the stock Catback. All right, so the stock Catback roughly weighs 35 pounds. Let's get the other exhaust on here to see if they weigh any less. We'll start with the Remark Boso Edition Axleback since it's the easiest to get on the scale. And this weighs in at 13 pounds, just under about 10 pounds of weight savings. Not too shabby for just the Axleback portion. Of course, the muffler is the heaviest part of that exhaust, so that's to be expected. But for how easy it is to swap out, I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 stars. We'll get the Invidia N1 Catback on next. I'm gonna have to balance these on here. All right, last piece here. 32.6 pounds, so about 2.5 pounds of weight savings. Not great, but it is less than the stock exhaust, so let's say 3.5 stars. All right, because the Apex I exhaust is, well, the mid-pipe section is a little bit longer since it's just a 3-piece design, I gotta get a different platform so that it doesn't just tip over. So we're gonna zero this out, and then we'll grab the exhaust. All right, let's see how much that weighs in at. 32.45 pounds, so very similar to the Invidia N1. Pretty much just over 2.5 pounds. Again, not that much savings. I am kind of shocked because I thought it was gonna weigh just as much with the Helmholtz resonators and all the extra materials that they use. It looks like it's more materials than the Invidia N1, but it does weigh less. So we're gonna give it 3.5 stars, same as the Invidia N1, because it's not that much more weight that it's shaving. So we've got a tie there, but the Remark Boso Edition Axleback runs away with it because it shaves off almost 10 pounds. Let's see how these exhausts look on the car. Now, obviously looks are subjective, but I'm gonna try to be as critical as possible. We're gonna start with the Remark Axleback. Just looking at this, there's really nothing that blows your mind besides the welds. It's honestly a little bit underwhelming, and I think it's because they went with these smaller 3.5-inch tips. They don't look big enough in those exhaust hole cutouts. They do stick out a tad bit further than your typical exhaust, and that's the inspiration from the Bosuzoku style. So I do appreciate that, but I think that someone who's inspired by that style would want to go with something a little bit more crazy. So maybe if they went with 4-inch tips that fill out those holes a little bit further, might be a tad bit better. They do have a couple different tip options. So they've got the polished stainless steel. They also have a burnt stainless steel where the outer portion of the tip here is burnt. And then they have a burnt blue stainless steel where the whole tip is blue. So that's a unique option. I do gotta say that it does look better than the stock exhaust, but I think it could look better with those larger tips. So for that, I'm going with 3.5 stars. The Invidia N1 is probably the most aggressive looking out of the three. It's got the massive 4-inch tips available in either the burnt finish that we have here or a polished stainless steel. They did do something a little bit different. They've angled the mufflers slightly outwards, and I'm not really a big fan of it because it offsets the tips in the bumper cutout, and it brings them dangerously close to the actual bumper itself, where you have to really be careful when you're installing this that nothing is touching to make sure that you're not melting the bumper. But it does look pretty good on the car. I mean, the large tips fill out the cutout well. You've got the Invidia logo engraved on both sides of the tips. You've got the Invidia plate on the Y pipe here, but I just wish that we were able to center those exhaust tips, and because of that, we're gonna go with a 3.75. I was gonna stick to halves, but we're gonna break it down into quarters to be critical. We already know that the Apex I N1X is immaculate off of the car, but now that we have it installed on the car, it just keeps getting better. This thing is sexy. I mean, look at this. The attention to detail is amazing. Each exhaust section has a number plate with the part number, even the mid-pipe section here. And then on this one, it's got the serial number. It's got the motor FA24 on there and made in Japan. It's a shame that a lot of this is gonna be hidden underneath the car. Now, when I first saw the measurements of the tips, I was a little bit disappointed because they are on the smaller side, but the way they have this designed makes it work. They've got the rolled edges on the tip cover here with the ApexI logo stamped on top, which is a nice touch. And then they have the muffler sitting right behind the short tip, which gives it an illusion that it's bigger than it is. If it was just the tips here in the bumper cutout, it would look small, but because the muffler is right there, it fits in that cutout really well. It's just a well-designed and engineered exhaust, and I don't really have any gripes for it. So we're gonna have to go with a 4.5 again. All right, I know I said I was gonna install all the exhausts on both cars and test them out, but I lied. Past me thought future me had a ton of time on his hands, and it turns out I don't. However, I was able to get the ApexI N1X installed on the FRS. It's the exhaust that I'm most curious about to see how it sounds and how it looks. And it looks amazing, especially with the cutout bumper here. You can see the exhaust in all of its glory, but I'm more curious on how this sounds with the FT Speed catted header, the unequal length header, and the Tomei catless front pipe that I have on here. So let's get this thing on the ground, go outside, and we're gonna do some flybys. Of course, we have to talk about how the exhausts sound. It's the most important thing when it comes to an exhaust, right? You guys just heard the exhaust clips, so I'll give you a little bit of feedback on what I think. The Remark Axleback, for just being an Axleback, it sounds surprisingly good. It's a louder, deep tone that just makes the car more fun to drive. It adds to the overall driving experience. It does suffer from a little bit of drone, but that's kind of to be expected because you're completely deleting the stock muffler. Taking into account how easy it is to install and the fact that it does sound good, I'm almost tempted to go to 4 stars, but I don't think a muffler delete warrants 4 stars, but it does sound better than the stock system. So we're gonna meet in the middle and give it a 3.5. If you've heard the Invidia N1 come up in a conversation about exhaust, you've probably heard about how droney and how loud it is. and it's not an exaggeration. It's very droney and it's very loud. With the rest of the exhaust stock, it's tolerable. On cold starts, your neighbors probably hate you. It does quiet down a little bit once it warms up. But if you decide to change out the front pipe, overpipe, the header, you're gonna have a hard time talking to your passenger and it's gonna be completely obnoxious. Now, does it sound better than the stock exhaust? Maybe just a little bit, just because it's louder and you can hear it more. It just takes the exhaust tone and amplifies it. But because of the droning and because it toys with the line of just being completely obnoxious, we gotta go with a 3.5. And I gotta turn these lights back on. Our beloved Apex I exhaust. Not only does it look good, it also sounds amazing. When I threw it on my FRS, even with the full exhaust setup, it sounded like a completely different car. With the Remark R1 exhaust I have on there, it's super loud and raspy, but I deal with it because that exhaust weighs nothing. But when I threw the Apex I exhaust on there, it wasn't too loud, which absolutely blew my mind, and it sounded amazing. And because of those Helmholtz resonators, there was no drone. Mind-blowing. I don't have anything bad to say about, okay. I do wish this exhaust was a little bit louder, but other than that, it's an awesome exhaust. It's on the GR86, it's a very refined and mature tone that's not too obnoxious, it's not raspy, it doesn't drone, it just sounds good and just makes you want to roll the windows down and listen to the exhaust as you go on your drive. It's 4.5 stars all day, easy. We've talked about the quality, the weight, how they look, how they sound, so now we can total up the scores. Bringing up the rear with 14.25 stars, we've got the Invidia N1. It's just a little bit too over the top. Not everybody wants an exhaust that is gonna annoy the shit out of your neighbors or just give you a headache on the way to the grocery store. But if you're looking for an exhaust that's super loud and you love the massive tips, this does check those boxes. In the runner-up position, we've got the Remark Boso Edition Axleback. Because of the ease of installation and the relatively inexpensive cost compared to the other two, it just ekes out the Invidia N1. It does have a uniqueness to it with the inspiration from the JDM Bosuzoku styling, and like I said, for an Axleback, it does sound pretty good. For the number 1 position, we have the Apex I N1X. This thing is just fantastic across the board. It's superb quality, fitment. They actually took the time to tune the Helmholtz resonators so you don't get any drone. It's gonna sound great with essentially any setup that you have. Yes, it's a $1,500 exhaust, but this is just kind of one of those things where you get what you paid for. And that is gonna give it the crown for today's video. I'm not gonna lie, this was a hell of a video to film. Taking the exhaust on and off the car and doing all that took a lot longer than I would have liked. But if you guys enjoyed this video and wanna see more of this sort of shootout video, whether it's with more exhaust or other parts, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.